especially you manga readers, probably the first thought was like, well, isn't all anime just bad adaptations of manga? Shut up, you. No one wants to hear from you, manga readers. This is a show about anime. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Nii-San Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Josh Zell Kim. And of course, with me is...
Yo, it's me, Crim, also known as the Asian Avenger. How's everybody doing? All the listeners and watchers at home.
Yeah, so last week we talked a little bit about, like Cowboy Bebop and how like some people are worried about live actions, deriving from anime. And like, I think the common sentiment I get a lot from these sort of live action adaptations is the whole idea of like, who asked for this? And so today we're going to do the opposite. We're going to think about things that an anime adaptation would potentially ruin. So before that, though, we're going to talk about some news. Actually, this week had some big news articles come out about just generally things that are upcoming for anime. So like one thing was there's a bunch, like Netflix announced a bunch of new projects that are going to come to Netflix in 2022 and beyond. And some of it's pretty interesting. I don't know. Krim, what do you think?
Oh, yes. Some of it is very interesting. Some of it's stuff that, first off, I think we had talked about a while back. If you want, I can lead in on it. But yeah, like it's a stacked list with some cool studios. Anime going to Netflix currently pretty good. I've been really happy about where the Netflix, everything that Netflix is doing to like acquire all the licenses of certain animes right now. I think they're just doing a good job.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the main thing here is like when you look at this list of things that they're bringing to Netflix, it's not just like I think Netflix is trying to carve out a sort of different piece and style to anime, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, where like it doesn't seem like they're trying to compete necessarily with like Crunchyroll or Funimation, and instead it feels like they're acquiring kind of unique IPs. And trying to bring anime to them. And so like going down this list, we have stuff like Ghost in the Shell. We have Ultraman. We have Army of the Dead Las Vegas. I don't know what that is, but that's
the Zack Snyder zombie film. And
okay.
I don't know if this is an anime or animated thing, like where it's just going to be like a kind of like a Pixar looking movie, but I can't imagine that with zombies. But the thing that's cool about it is they do have some of the original actors reprising their roles. So you've got Dave Bautista, aka Drax, so pretty cool.
But yeah, we have like Cyberpunk getting an anime, and the video game release was contentious at best. But,
man,
we'll see. We'll see how the anime might do, I guess. And they did also announce that it's going to be done by Studio Trigger, which kind of feels like the doubling down on the whole contentious thing. Trigger obviously well known for awesome animation and visuals, but also just very wonky in story. And so we'll see, I guess, on that.
I'm excited. I'm excited for this. This is the one I like on this list. This is like the second most excited I am.
Gotcha.
Because I was
did
really.
You play Cyberpunk?
I did.
I did.
Did
you like the game?
I wanted to. I really wanted to.
Okay. Interesting.
It was way rushed, right? So that was the biggest issue. It was super rushed. So they just put out this like really bad project. Like I cannot tell you how much better the game would have been if it weren't for stockholders and shareholders forcing the game to come out sooner. Because, like, example, one of the coolest, like some of the stuff that's like awesome in the game is like it's like the way it looks, right? But it just doesn't look complete. Like the aesthetic of the game was huge. And so like I remember I was playing the game and I was doing some super long mission and I had forgotten to save. But I ended up dying because I just took a turn. Like I just pressed right on my joystick, and for some odd reason, it shot my character all the way up into the sky, and I just never stopped falling. but I was falling upwards. So, and I'm just like, I think the game is broken. and the amount of times where characters wouldn't fully render. Well, let's just hope that all of that isn't there with the anime. Okay, because
they make that canon.
if that's canon, I'm going to be sad because, like, dude, the world that it has at its disposal and the idea of like this, like, cyberpunk, like, visual is something that we all kind of love, right? Like, I feel like the whole hot pink, everything about it is beautiful. So I'm excited for this. I'm out of my mind. Like, and the fact that Studio Trigger is doing it, that's the biggest thing for me here. So I know that visually it'll look great.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, we'll see. I outside of the technical issues that were with Cyberpunk, I never actually heard anything about the story. It was
non-existent, dude.
Well, so I think the thing is that, like, who knows how good it was? Because for me, anyways, it just felt like it was so overshadowed by how much hype there was going into this, and then just like the video game side of it. So I don't know. Maybe this is a chance for Cyberpunk to somewhat redeem themselves. We'll see. More interesting IPs that are coming to Netflix. Well, I guess this is a second season. I didn't know there was a first season of Pacific Rim's anime, and a second season of Dota's Dragon's Blood, animated by Studio Mir, which is probably most famous for Avatar. And then other stuff that's coming by that I think is interesting is like Devil May Cry is going to be animated by Powerhouse. And
for those that don't know, Powerhouse did, I believe, Castlevania.
Yes.
So
yep.
Yeah, look, if there's anything we know, they're good with dark and gritty, and that whole like world that is in Devil May Cry, I could definitely see them bring it to life.
Yeah. Netflix is also bringing Splinter Cell, which is actually animated by Sun Creature, which is one of the animation studios I personally worked with on my Riot marketing stuff, and so that's kind of cool.
I'm just more shocked that Splinter Cell is getting a show.
Yeah, do people remember who Tom Clancy is?
Like,
well, I guess no. I mean, Rainbow Six is still pretty popular, so I guess.
Oh yeah.
So I guess Tom Clancy's still in there. Yeah, I don't know. I thought we left Tom Clancy behind in like year 2010, but I guess this is the revive. And then so again, you just look down this list, right? And the animation studios are varied. Some Western, some Japanese and whatnot. But I think the thing that stands out to me is just like the IP that they bring in is not stuff that I would have immediately thought animate, right? Like Tomb Raider, even though, Tomb Raider is developed by a Japanese studio, but still Splinter Cell, Devil May Cry, like it like makes sense, but like somehow they've always been separate. So it's kind of interesting to see that. I feel like Netflix is actively chasing down these IPs and trying to bring them into like animation form, which I just think it's different, right? Than like what Crunchyroll and like some of these other places are doing. Like
Crunchyroll, Funimation, they're all doing like the 4,000th isekai that we don't need, right? So like, but like I'm actually applauding Netflix because legitimately they are out there getting things much like you had mentioned that you wouldn't normally think of, right? And they're if you couldn't tell already from their deep catalog, they took a chance on Squid Games, all these Korean shows, all these other, like, they did, I don't know if you watched it, but Tresse, it was an anime kind of like Castlevania, but it was set in like, the Philippines, right? Mm-hmm. And so they've taken a lot of chances on tons of shows, and dude, they have a deep catalog of like new, fresh shows, things like that you wouldn't normally think of. So this is good. I think this is a good thing. I really hope that, they have enough funding to keep doing that because, we've been having a little bit of a worry here about, how original like animes do, right? Or like anything new. So the fact that Netflix is constantly taking shots on something new, like example, Exception, that's one of like the animes we talked about a while back. That's going to be the horror anime, the space one, that has designs by Amano, who, if you don't know, designs the characters from Final Fantasy and stuff like that. So this is a show that is my number one and most hyped show going into like whatever Netflix is bringing in next year. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. Netflix is definitely doing their own thing. Whether it's good or not, we'll have to see, because I think it is like it's kind of a risk, I think, like especially when you take IPs that are like very well known, like Devil May Cry and Castlevania and Tomb Raider, and like I love those games, and I'm excited to see what they do with it, and hopefully it's good. And I think like Netflix trying something different is a good thing, I think, for anime fans. Speaking of anime studios and stuff doing different things, we have a report on Marvel Studios looking to expand into anime for their future products. And again, I think this makes a lot of sense to me, and like it's no surprise to me that Disney, of all places, would start looking at animation as like a vehicle for their stuff. And we even already mentioned, I think last week, that like Disney has their like offshoot villains anime thing that's coming out soon. And so, I don't know. It just makes sense. Anime is very popular. Marvel's very popular. Disney has clearly the chops to put those things together. So
Visions was a hit. I think Visions was what was the pending, like, oh, well, we'll see if we pull the trigger on it. Visions did well, and now they're doing that with Marvel. Now, some of you already know this, and you may have suffered through it like I did. There is already some Marvel animes out there, like the X-Men and all of that stuff. And like I don't mean like Wolverine and the X-Men. I mean like anime, like full on anime, and they're pretty bad, except for except for Storm. Storm is mega waifu. That's the only thing that I can confirm there. But other than that, it's real bad, dude. So I just hope that now that it's under Disney and like mainline Marvel, we get something good.
Yeah, I think this is further proof that I think anime is just mainstream now, right? And like,
100.
And I think the secret to anime, as in like the animation style that we know as anime, like the secrets are starting to get spread out, right? Like with like studios from Korea, Powerhouse Animation, most famously with Castlevania, like there are now other studios outside of Japan, really pushing forward and, doing their own cool work. And I think we're only going to see more of that. And that's a good and bad thing, and depending on how you look at it, because like it's a good thing in that we're just going to get way more anime. That's obviously a good thing. Bad news is they're not all going to be good, but I think that's okay, right? Like just any medium, like the more like expansive it gets, you're going to get good stuff and you're going to get bad stuff. And I think the more important thing though is that it's just going to get more widespread, and I hope that more studios will pop up, with this, and like there's going to be like a resurgence in like animators. That's what I'm hoping for, because like we already know like the Japanese studios are already strapped for paying their animators and such. So we'll see.
Unless the prime minister has something to say about it.
Yeah. Other pieces of news, man. The news section today is pretty long here because there's just so much stuff. Arknights announced their animation adaptation. At some point, Crim, we're gonna have to do a gotcha episode, because gotcha is taking over the world in more ways than one. And like, I think what's interesting is Arknights. I'm pretty sure Arknights started as a mobile game. I'd have to double check on that. But now they're getting anime, and like we're seeing the opposite of that too, with like Tactile Destiny having a show and then releasing the mobile game. And mobile games and anime seem to go hand in hand. And one thing is for certain, Gotcha definitely pays the bills for those studios. So
for sure. I mean, we've got the Jujutsu Kaisen mobile game coming out soon.
Yeah.
The Mob Psycho one came out. That was kind of bad, but like whatever. I played it anyway. Like right now, I think Gacha games. It was only a matter of time, right? Because you look at a lot of what Gacha games are. It seriously is no surprise. Like I'm expecting my my Genshin Impact anime sometime next year. Like there's gonna. It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. Yep.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Of all of them though, the one that I'm surprised doesn't have of all these gotchas and everything and all these games so far, the one that doesn't have an anime yet is Fire Emblem.
Yes, absolutely. It's so weird,
No idea. I mean,
I guess in some ways, like games are so like narrative focused in outside the actual combat. I actually don't understand.
There's
like,
no reason.
It's all there. It's all there.
yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So yeah, I agree with you. I'm just like Fire Emblem should definitely have it. But yeah, anyways, I think that's something that's interesting. And then couple other news, movies that are releasing soon. Quintessential Quintuplets movie has been announced, and I think is going to come out very soon. I think in the next year, at least in Japan. And then fun little tidbit for you, Crim, is that Kimetsu no Yaiba, also known as Demon Slayer, you might have heard of that one.
Never heard of it.
Is estimated to have generated $8.75 billion in all revenue in 2020, which includes volume sales, novels, anime, DVDs, stage plays, events, merchandising, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera.
Good.
Dude.
God. Wow.
$8.75 billion. That's a lot of money.
You know what? I'm not surprised. I bought Demon Slayer toilet paper.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it was in Japan.
It had Zenitsu on it.
It did
I
have
wipe my ass with Zenitsu's
dude.
face.
So you admit it? he's good for something. Okay, they had it all stacked up. There was this whole like spot when I was in Japan, right? I think it was like 20. Yeah, it was. No, wait, was it 2019? Well, I think it was. When did the pandemic start? I don't remember. 2019, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay,
it's all a blur.
Exactly. I was in Japan, and I think it was 2019, and there was legit like Demon Slayer toilet paper, and it's not like it's like any kind of like specialty in ply or anything like that. It's just the outside of the wrapping is Zenitsu's yellow like kimono, and then they had one for Tanjiro and all of that. I'm just like, oh. Oddly, I want one. So yeah, sure. I'm not surprised they made this much money. You can't. When I was in Japan in 2019, there was no corner that didn't have something with Demon Slayer. And then when I got home, the same thing. No corner without Demon Slayer. Hot Topic has it. Zoomies has it. All these places in the malls have it. Like, I'm just waiting for this is gonna happen, and I'm calling it now. A Nike collab. There's gonna be some kind of sneaker with Demon Slayer. I'm willing to bet on it. If not them, then Vans will.
I actually saw that like pop-up shops are doing like their own stitches of stuff, and it looks so sick. Like I saw this one, the water Hashira, I forgot his name already. The guy, like the first Hashira that Tanjiro meets.
Right, the old dude, right?
Green yellow thing. No.
I
forgot his name.
The long-haired one, the one that saves him, right? From
yeah.
Okay.
I saw those like plain Nike sweaters with like the Nike logo in the middle. Someone like cross stitched that with the Hashira like green yellow like a pattern thing, and it was so cool. And I need to go back and see what they're doing in that shop, because I'm sure they'll make more of it. But like, yeah, obviously Nike, Vans, like all these stores are going to do it. Like I feel like we've slowly started seeing that with like, I think a lot of these companies have done collabs with like Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z. But dude, Demon Slayer is the hot thing right now, man. Like get with the times, Nike. Like
yeah.
So it's a matter of time, I think.
100. But now, after that stacked news section, right? Like there's so much that happened in bursts. On to the meat. So Xell, take us into this.
Yeah, so again, I mentioned it at the beginning of the episode, but I think whenever a live action gets announced, everyone kind of holds their breath a little bit, and they're like, "Oh boy, here we go again," right? And I think the sentiment is generally just like live action from anime just generally doesn't work, right? Like we have a bunch of examples of that. I think famously the Death Note Netflix adaptation was truly something, right? Like it almost always feels like when they do a live action, there's just like a component that's missing from the anime, right? Like something about the acting just doesn't feel right when it's real people. The action doesn't look as good as it does in anime, or like just generally like the Death Note Netflix adaptation. It's just like the spirit of the show gets so reconfigured for the live action format that it just loses the original soul of the show. So I want to do the opposite now. I want to think of things that, like, if you made an anime for, it would objectively ruin that thing. And I think it's just like a funny thought experiment, because like so much of what we think of like can be done in live action, it's almost like live action is more restrictive than animation, right? Because like animation, you can be very over the top with like your acting. You can be cheesy in its own way, but you can also do over the top like action sequences in a way that would be very difficult or expensive to do live in live action. So yeah, I don't know. So me and Crim have sort of came up with our own like sort of like things that we think would be bad if we turned into anime. And I know probably some people, especially you manga readers, probably the first thought was like, well, isn't all anime just bad adaptations of manga? Shut up, you. No one wants to hear from you, manga readers. This is a show about anime. And I would say the same thing about light novel readers, but there's only like 2 of you in the world. So
hey, what's up? You called?
That's one. Okay, so no, I'm kidding. But kind of. So yeah, I don't know. I think the first like thing I think would be a poor anime adaptation generally would be horror. We've talked about this before, and
stole my thunder.
I'm sorry. You take it from here. I'm tagging you in. Tag you in. You talk about why am I taking the horror concept from
you
Crim?
Sunk my ship, dude. Come on.
Okay. Sunk your battleship, man.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I know that I constantly advocate for more horror, right? And I still stand by that. But there's elements and shades of horror that you can do, and there's ones that you can't do. Now, the ones that I wouldn't recommend doing are like, example, I'm not going to take The Exorcist and I'm not going to turn that into an anime. right? Like, I cannot imagine an Exorcist anime that would do well, because first off, it doesn't capture the fear, the silence. Because like you can't have an anime intro to The Exorcist. There is no J-Rock or whatever that you could throw there that I would be like, oh, well, this is great. It follows the priest. You know what I mean? Like, but it's just one of those things where it would get lost in translation, right? Like the shift from from live action to anime. The serialized form that is anime does not work for the original Exorcist. And I use The Exorcist as an example here, but there are tons of horror movies where it relies a lot on just silence, and it there are scenes where it's just silent. You hear nothing but like the low hum of like, I don't know, the wind outside and the characters like staring, and that's it. And it's
do you think it's like the audio that's holding back anime in that like what?
It's both.
Like, to talk specifically,
there's the audio that's within the anime, right? Because there's always some kind of audio going on, right? Whether it's music or something along those lines, there's usually something going on there. So in horror, some of the scenes require you to have dead silence so that the jump scare can hit you next, right? And they rely on a lot of like B noise effects. So if that's the case, I just don't think that works in anime. And like, it's also hard to be. I think we talked about this back in the horror episode of the podcast, and it's just hard to be scared looking at anime, right? Like, I think there are things that look spooky. Yes, like I think Maruko-chan's got like some great creature designs and spirit designs, but like I will not walk away afraid like I am watching, like The Exorcist or like, I don't know, Hereditary or any of those movies, right? Like, I can't imagine a single Studio A24 movie. Like, can you imagine, like, like Midsommar for the listeners and watchers or something like that? Like, oh, let's watch Midsommar, the anime. What? Like that could not work. And I think that's the main reason. It's a lot of the audio cues, and there's the fact that just jump scares don't work in anime.
Yeah, I think personally, one of the tough things is like, I think a lot of what horror does is it draws you in from a empathetic sort of way where like you feel like you're there, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why you get the horror heebie-jeebies is like it could happen to you, like that's not like maybe actively running, but it's kind of like the idea, right? That's like, oh, when you watch something, something can come get me. But it's like when you have the animation layer, in front of you to get through, like that level of realism can't possibly, like, it breaks your, like, I don't know, suspension of disbelief, I guess.
I think
so,
it in a way also breaks your immersion, right? Like into that world.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And that's mainly it. Like if I watch Hereditary, there's like by now you'll probably have all seen it. It's been enough time, so it's not a spoiler. But the thing here is like, yeah, like there's a scene where, you know, the silhouette of the grandma, right? Like, and that, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, there's just a silhouette, right? Now imagine. That can work in like a horror movie. That scares you because you're in that world. It's real life. There's no breaking of your immersion through an animated layer. So that's like, I remember going home and I literally checked every corner when I was doing my laundry, whatever it was like. And this was not like I was 9. This was like 2 years ago. So the thing, like these movies can get you because there's not that layer of animation to break your immersion. So I think that's one of the main things why I can't find like horror anime that scare me, but that doesn't mean horror anime shouldn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, I think Byakuya-chan is kind of an interesting one because, like, they use the horror element sparingly and not necessarily to impact the viewer and make them, like, go home super scared for their life or anything like that. It's just the idea of tension, and you're living the tension that the main character, you know, Miko, is, like, going through, right? And I think that's, like, an interesting lens on horror that still works, but maybe not in the same way that, like, what we think of typical horror movies do for us, like right now,
like a slasher flick, like Friday the 13th. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's not as scary. Like that. Well, just watch Blood Sea or something like that, right? Like that's the same thing, right? Like, but
100%. So yeah, we've talked about this a lot in previous episodes. Horror is just one of those things that I think anime hasn't figured out. Like I'm willing to believe that there's a version of anime where I go home and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared. But like, I have yet
that exists. You've seen it. It's called X-Arm. There is real horror.
I never had any nightmares after X-Arm, surprisingly. You know, you'd think, CG, you know. Okay. So I'm going to go into the next thing that I personally think would make for a really poor anime adaptation. And I'm willing to be wrong on this, but I think like an anime version of beloved Western sort of like fantasy stories would not do very well, like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. I'm willing to believe that it could be done, maybe especially for Harry Potter, but specifically for Lord of the Rings, there's something weird and off-putting about the idea that, like, I don't know. It like, I just can't see it happening. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but there's something like deeply weird about it to me that feels like it's. Yeah, I don't know. It was just something that sprang to mind because, you know, when I was doing this thought exercise for myself of like what anime adaptations would do poorly in my mind, I just couldn't unsee a world where like Lord of the Rings could make it. I don't know. I mean, I have no logic here, but it's just like a gut feeling. It's weird because I know anime has done high fantasy before. That's fine. They can do magic. They can do this thing, but there's almost like a grittiness that somewhat feels like it wouldn't work as well. I don't know, man. Do you think I'm wrong here? I could totally own up to being wrong here.
I could totally see Arwen doing the ooh blush, like, you know what I mean?
Oh my God.
And Gandalf, like, oh my God. Like I think legitimately though, I could understand where you're coming from. I mean, I just think like Lord of the Rings is just, okay, let's say you break Lord of the Rings up, right? Because its story is also a lot. I think its story is a lot. It's already a lot in movie form, which is why I don't like Lord of the Rings. But so the thing for me to like why I just don't think it works is because there's just too much, right? There's too much. It doesn't work in serialized form. And if you did break every bit of Lord of the Rings down into a serialized form, dude, that's going to be longer than like That's going to be like 1,000 episodes, dude. Like 2,000 episodes.
One Piece did it.
Right, sure, but like One Piece works, I guess, in that world. I don't know if Lord of the Rings does. Like, right. You look at Sauron, you look at a lot of the things that are going on in that world, and it like the big action pieces. Like, I think it's not to say that anime can't have big action pieces, but to the level that is Lord of the Rings, something about fantasy like that, just I don't think it works in anime form either. So yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
It was just one of those things, like classic Western fantasy stuff came to mind as like things that I would find kind of weirdly off-putting in anime form. I think of like Game of Thrones as like another example of like,
oddly, Game of Thrones works for me. Is that weird? Like,
I mean,
no, I'm not even joking. Like,
in general.
Like, like I'm talking like I think Game of Thrones, if you were to take Game of Thrones, that could be an anime. Why is that? Why is it that Game of Thrones could be, but Lord of the Rings can't be?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about that, right? Because I thought about Castlevania, the anime, right? When I thought about that, and I could see a live action form of that, and like I could see what that would look like, and I think Castlevania was one of the things that came to mind of like, oh, maybe Western stuff can work, and I'm just being weird about it being like transferred over into anime. And I still think in some ways I could be wrong that like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones like both couldn't, like they might work in anime, but I think it's one of those things where like I don't know what anime brings there that like isn't already well done in the live action, I guess. You know what I mean?
Unnecessary fan service.
Yeah. Well, okay. Oh my God. Now I'm imagining just like
the beach episode of Lord of the Rings. Dude, you didn't know you needed that until now.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Samwise Gamgee. Let's go.
Yo, get the Shire. We're going on
They're like running around in the sand with their giant hobbit feet. Yeah. I don't know. I think more so than anything, it's just one of those things where like no one would have asked for it to be an anime form, and I don't think it like would have added anything that wasn't already done, and so like if they changed the tone of Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, I think people would be upset and I think it would be like not very good for the show. IMO. I don't know.
But the funny thing about that is I think Game of Thrones could be an anime. Because like Game of Thrones, I think that's because Game of Thrones just really leans into some absurd stuff.
Yeah,
right?
And I think the other thing too is that it's way more character drama driven, which I think anime does that pretty well, anyways.
Right.
Like I think a lot of Attack on Titan stuff is very Game of Thrones-esque, if I'm going to be honest about it. So,
Game of Thrones works, but for some odd reason, Lord of the Rings just doesn't to me, and I don't know why that is. And also, when you said Western, I thought you meant like, I don't know, 310 to Yuma or something like that. And I'm like, oh, damn, okay. You're right, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It was some of these IPs, like I just thought about it and I can't put seriously, I've thought about this for so long about like why I feel so weird about it, and I still really can't verbalize exactly why I feel that way. But like, some of these Western high fantasy stuff just feels like it would be hard to nail down the classic high fantasy vibe in that way. But I don't know.
I think what it is that the way the narrative is written, right, is just way different, right? And then the characters, like when you look at the characters, they don't lend themselves to being in the, like, think of every character that's in Lord of the Rings. None of them outside of like maybe Frodo and Bilbo Baggins, like really feel like they could be anime characters.
But I think they could. I think they
Really?
could do it. I can't imagine a sort of like slice of life feel when they're all talking about their tea time, their second tea time, and their second lunch, and
but that's like the Hobbits, right? The Hobbits, I think, can all be an anime.
Yeah, but then when they get into like the more gritty stuff, Gandalf shows up and he's fighting Balroth or whatever, Balgor or whatever the thing's name is, and he's saying, "You shall not pass." Like I could see that scene being super epic in anime form, and like I think of these like set pieces, and I think like
the set piece
I think anime could work,
but the character themselves, I just don't see the character. Like,
dude, Sam would be cute as hell as an anime character. He's just like a cute, bumbly, fatter, hobbit who's just like super nice.
Hobbits are the most anime characters there.
But then you have like, I don't know, Legolas, Gimli. Yeah,
Gimli,
they could work as anime characters. They're a dwarf and an elf. That's very anime-esque.
I'll give you Gimli, but I guess I think more of like Aragorn, and Legolas and Sauron and like all of them, right? Like, I don't know. Or what's Hugo Weaving's character's name?
I don't know.
Elrond. I can't see these as anime characters, dude. They're just not written to be an anime character.
But you could do it.
But that would break the spirit of what the character's supposed to be, or at least what I perceive them to be from the book, right? Like, there's no timeline where I think or in my world at least, I just can't imagine these characters getting the anime treatment. They're way too stoic, but not stoic to the level in the way that like how in some anime characters they're stoic to a meme level, right? Like they're extremes of every character, of every Western character.
I think Castlevania shows that like stoicism can kind of go. Like, what's his name? The vampire dude. He's pretty stoic.
The vampire dude in the vampire show. Which one are we talking about?
The Castlevania.
The main one, Alucard?
No, his son. I forgot his name.
Oh, wait.
Long white-haired guy.
Yeah, Alucard.
Was that Alucard? Yeah, him. He's like pretty stoic, I think, and like for the most part, he's not like.
But he has that American writing style where he's got like this swagger that's like also like kind of. He's got like the Marvel humor, right?
Actually,
he's got the swagger.
You need to watch Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga came up a lot in my thought, like when I was like deliberating on this stuff, and like Vinland Saga is Vikings and like characters aren't very ooh, like they feel just much more like I could see a live action of Vinland Saga working really well, I guess is like another way of putting it. It's just like the characters are not very exaggerated. They're much more to the point, I guess, the way like Western things are filmed and acted out. And so like maybe I need to rewatch Vinland Saga, but that was like an example that came up in mind of like, oh, like this is a show that the sort of like anime influence of it didn't really matter to me that much, So I don't know. It's funny that I brought up Lord of the Rings, but now I'm defending why Lord of the Rings could be an anime. But like where I ended up with my thought experiment is that like anime is actually so varied in so many different like ways, and anime itself is just a medium, right? So it can be kind of whatever, and so like if it's done well, I believe in it, but I do think that it doesn't lend itself well to taking sort of like an existing Western IP and trying to recreate the sort of vibe and tone that Western IP has, I guess. So that was and that was kind of where I was at.
I pretty much fully agree. Like that there are. Well, I do think that like it would struggle to catch the vibes. Like, can you imagine the tension watching like I don't know Godfather in an anime? like you know what I mean? Like I can't see something like that happening, right? Like
I wish I knew how to say like for my daughter's wedding in Japanese, like I don't know.
You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. Like you wouldn't be able to translate the significance of something like that, I think in like an anime. Like now I could see like, not to say that you couldn't do some of the movies. Like I could see like The Pianist, like that could be an anime. We already have music anime, right? Like that is a great anime, but I just can't see like The Godfather or
how about like Breaking Bad? Like, do you think that could work?
Yeah, actually. Well, okay. So as you all know, We just did last week's episode, the opposite of this, which is what we could see becoming an anime. Yeah. And I had Breaking Bad as, yes, that is totally an anime, though, because every character is absurd and kind of a meme within a trope, right? With like on a trope. And on top of that, the absurdity that they write themselves out of every hole they get into is anime levels of absurdity. So Breaking Bad is an excellent anime. Let's go with that. Now, if you were to take something like I had already mentioned, like The Godfather, but what about something at like The Departed, right? A lot of the mob movies, I feel like I just feel like they don't work, or even like The Prestige. I don't think things like that could work. And I'm trying to think. What's that one movie? Oh my God. Oh, we had this discussion earlier, and it was whether or not you could see Pulp Fiction as like an anime, right? And I could not see Pulp Fiction as an anime. Why is that? Because the way all these characters, like Quentin Tarantino does have some absurd characters and plot lines and twists. So like not all of his movies have the anime proof shield, but I think Pulp Fiction could not be an anime. So
I think it would work in like a Cowboy Bebop style. Like
really
sort of like retro 90s look to it, and then it was just like heavily stylized. Like to me, Quentin Tarantino has like a very like stylized sort of feel to his movies. Does
that not get lost though in anime? Like, how do you stylize
in anime form? It wouldn't be as Tarantino-esque, maybe. I don't know. Like Kill Bill, I think would work perfectly as an anime, for example, right?
Kill Bill is an anime, yeah. Like that.
Yeah.
But like, example, I chose I think Inglourious Bastards would be a great anime.
Yeah.
But Pulp Fiction, I can't see that. I can't see like something like the iconic tip scene from Reservoir Dogs going down in anime, right? Like,
it would definitely lose some of its appeal, I think, in a little bit. But I do think Pulp Fiction as an anime could work. I don't know.
Pulp Fiction.
I need to maybe I need to rewatch it. Maybe I if I rewatch it, I'd feel differently. But like my instinct of when I think of Pulp Fiction and I think of like this pretty like very dramatic like when I think of what makes Pulp Fiction so interesting is the way that the story is told, like the fact that you have these sort of concurrent plot lines that like sort of intertwine in sort of a weird, wacky way. Like that to me is what makes Pulp Fiction versus like how the characters necessarily act. And they're all pretty ridiculous characters, and so
they are.
I guess
they are.
So I guess to me, like, I feel like you could do it, but it's, again, when you're taking these IPs like that or a classic movie, it's sort of like, but why? So, I feel like that's like the main question for me when I think about like, what would this look like as an anime? I'm just always like in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, the original was good. Like Pulp Fiction is a good movie. So why?
let me ask you this. What would you say if I said to you, okay, just think of like literally every Wes Anderson film.
Okay, I need to pull up a list here. Wes Anderson,
like think
films.
Okay, Fantastic Mr. Fox was actually an animated movie, but like think Rushmore. Okay, think Rushmore. Think Moonrise Kingdom. I forgot. There's one about a hotel. Like that.
The Grand Budapest?
The Grand Budapest. These are things I think that are heavily just too stylistic to be ported over into anime. And I think that's the main thing. Like, I think it's hard to nail exactly why some of these don't work. But I think the closest thing for me is it's a lot about the stylistic ways that the director shoots the movie, right? Whether it's the hues, the color palettes, and like, I mean, you could say that that could still be applied to anime, but there's just something about a Wes Anderson film, and like I think it's the acting, right? Like it's maybe like it's a lot of the actors that are also backing it too, right? Lines that are delivered a certain way get lost in anime. Like you could just see like a simple twitch in the eye of an actor, right, as they say something. And I think that gets lost in anime.
I guess like part of it is when I'm arguing about these things, I'm trying to imagine the perfect version of the anime, right? Because like in all honesty, if you took any of the things that we talked about today and you went on to like, I don't know, freaking Bones' animation like studio in Japan, and you were like, hello, you mysteriously understand me in English, but I have a proposal for you. Make Pulp Fiction in anime. You know, like chances are, and you know, you show up with, you know, $20 million in your pocket as well, that you would like the anime they would produce probably doesn't work, right? Like in all of these things that we said, like I would say 99% of the time these things would just generally not work, not because anime can't do it. It's just that like logistically and to the precision that you would have to make these things requires so much, right? Like, you know, if you did a Wes Anderson film, if you did a Quentin Tarantino film into anime, like I would want those guys involved in the animation project to make it work to their vision, right? And if they like, if you made it all perfect like that, I could see a world, but like, yeah.
Don't you think it's because the acting? A lot of it is the acting.
I think anime can do acting. You know, like I
don't know, man. Like I'm thinking like Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro sitting there, right? Driving that taxi. Like there's, you know who Robert De Niro is and you know the way he acts. So like the tension is all on him. I don't know if you could get that same tension. Like that seems like, dude, like the acting of like some of these movies just, I feel like are so superb that it'd be hard to translate over to anime and get it in an animated style.
Yeah, I think like, especially when it comes to specific actors, I think it's tough because capturing their essence would be very difficult. But I wonder, like, I guess I just wonder if you were to separate it a little bit. I don't know. I guess my point here is that like when you have when the original is so good, any sort of like straying away from the soul of what made that original thing good would feel like a complete flub on the adaptation's part, right? And that's like pretty much mirrored to how we think about like why the heck are they making a live action of Cowboy Bebop, right? Like I think like, you know, to circle back on everything, I think that's kind of it, right? Is like when the original is so good with like all these elements that like made it truly wonderful and you're trying to port it over to a completely different medium, I think it's just a hard, no matter which way you slice it, you know? And yeah, I guess that's kind of where I've landed at with a lot of the stuff is just like when the original hits it, like let's think of a movie that is not as excellent, because like a lot of the films that we're talking about are like some of the ones that like people herald as some of the most like classic best movies of all time. But like what are some movies maybe that are like less than maybe the best movies of all time that like would adapt in a way that like makes more sense? I don't know.
I mean, okay, so let's just like I think more TV shows could adapt easily. Because they're in a serialized form. And I think that's a big part of it, right? Like a lot of these movies, the ones that are mentioned are meant to be, they're not like a franchise, right? Like outside of like Godfather or something like that. Like they're not meant to be a franchise. They're meant to be a good one-off movie. So I think that's the hard part about turning something like that and shifting it from that to a serialized version. Whereas if you went to a serialized version to a movie, I guess that's more plausible, right? Like I think that could happen. So if we were to talk about just like any Western media or anything, I think the best thing that could switch over to an anime is something TV show related. Like Lost could easily be an anime. Breaking Bad could be an anime. How I Met Your Mother.
That 70s show.
That 70s show. You would have to do some psychedelic animation styles, which could totally happen. But I think those can be an anime. As for like current, like if you think about movies though, just like some mid-tier movies.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, what do you? I recently watched Dune.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Dune is. By the way, for those that are listening to this, don't worry, I won't say any spoilers. I think that movie perfectly treaded the line of being average. It's so perfectly okay. And I love the director. He made my favorite movie in Blade Runner 2049. Right now, this movie. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say this is heralded as one of the greatest movies of all time. Do you think a movie like Dune could exist? All right, it's a sci-fi movie where it's actually, you know what, with the topics that anime have done, sure, why not? But Dune as a movie is, there's a famous bloodline that lives on a planet of spice. Right, it's a bunch of deserts. There's an Alaskan bullworm, and I think that's like about as much as I can say without spoiling it. Right, so I think something like that, or maybe like a James Bond movie. These are all like perfectly mid-tier.
So I guess like for these movies that are less coveted, I guess is the way I would put it. You know, if they went and they did their own sort of bastardized version of it in anime form,
right?
Do you think people would get as upset? Like, because I guess like my question here, and I keep going back and forth on like the whole like anime to live action to anime, and like the similarities of like what my complaints would be on each one is like if we took something like an anime that people weren't super hyped on, like I don't X-Arm. Okay, maybe that's too far under. But like if someone did a live action adaptation of that, I don't think anyone would complain because there's only like 2 fans left in the world for X-Arm, right?
Are there any?
and then like similarly for a movie that like some people really love, but like people probably wouldn't be up in arms about. I don't know. Like I think like Interstellar. You know, Interstellar is one of those movies
hold
that
on.
like
I love that movie.
I think that movie was just okay.
Oh
Hans Zimmer, great soundtrack, but
it was love, dude. Duh, that's what overwrites everything.
Does Interstellar as an anime work? You know,
it totally could. It could. Interstellar could.
And I guess like even if they changed some of the elements there, I don't think people would be as up in arms because like I think when you get to some of these movies that like people herald as like cinematic masterpieces, there's like very specific details of like the acting or the cinematography and these things that like all add up into the overall experience that like people would be like, why are you changing that? Like if you made an anime version of the Mona Lisa, no one would applaud you for that. It's just like you've lost the understanding of why the Mona Lisa was amazing, and I think like similarly when you take a movie that's like if you took I'm trying to think. The Shining, you made it into an anime, right? Like you would lose a lot of what made The Shining great, and like the style, that director is famous for how specific he is and how detailed everything is and the acting that happens within the thing. And like if you were to translate to anime, there's no way you would be able to recreate that detail and that cinematography, it would just be impossible, right?
Yeah, that's impossible, yeah.
And I think that's kind of where it's at too with both sides of this thing where like in anime with Cowboy Bebop, it's not that like Cowboy Bebop is like a cinematic masterpiece or whatever, but like it definitely has like a very specific
it is
vibe
an anime
detail.
masterpiece though.
Yeah, and so like it has like there are details about it that I think people associate to why it's so great with like the way it was animated and like the way like the characters feel and move and the even like the character acting within the animation, right? Like the way like Spike Spiegel moves in that show is so unique in that like he's like this very tall, lithe character who still is like super like mobile and and strong. Like I think there's like these things that we capture within what we consider like a beautiful anime or whatever. And so when that sort of thing gets adapted, it's like, it's tough. But I think when it comes to these shows that I think they're not as heralded as like masterpieces, right? I think that's where there's a lot more room for interpretation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the word. And I think that's sort of the key there.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think anybody is gonna like be like, oh, dude, you took a dump in my oatmeal today if you remade, I don't know, one of the random Bond movies or something like that, right? like you know what I mean? There's a lot of like mid-tier franchises, but don't you want to see, like, I would totally want to see a little bit like how Star Wars Visions, right? You took the world of Star Wars and you put it through anime. I would love to see more of that. I think that'd be pretty cool. Obviously, there are just some franchises that flat out don't work. and I think that is heavily driven by the fact that there's just good actors. There's such good acting—that you just can't animate it. I just don't know how you would do it. I don't know how you would do it.
I think specifically for Star Wars, and I think franchises with like really fleshed out worlds can do really well in anime because like you can tell different stories within it. And actually, now that I think about it, okay, going back to the Lord of the Rings thing, right? If you weren't following the gang, right? Like, and it was like the offshoot where you, I don't know, hang out with Sauron for a day or something. I don't know.
My life as an evil,
an evil overlord. Dude, I would watch that. I would 100% watch that.
Overlord season 5, baby.
And I guess like, you know, when they have such a fleshed out universe and you take a piece of that and you expand it like Star Wars Visions did, I think that works perfectly fine. I think it's when the more specific the original is, the harder it becomes to adapt. And I think like going back to the anime, like the live action from an anime thing, like that's kind of my qualm there too, with like some of the shows that they pick, like Death Note, Full Metal Alchemist, Cowboy Bebop.
But they're relying on the title, right? Because the thing is, the title sells. The title gets eyes. So if the issue here is like well, this is a little bit like in the world of like what we deal with in anime, right? Mm-hmm. Studios are afraid to pick up a newer title, right? A lesser known title. They want something that's going to be guaranteed to be a hit, right? So they're going to go with the isekai. So naturally, when they're trying to go from like, you know, anime to live action, they're going to do something like Monster Hunter. They're going to, you know, like titles that carry weight to the name alone sells. So
do you think Sword Art Online could make an interesting live action? I feel like I'm cursing the world right now. There's just like monkey paws all over the world that are just curling as I'm like mentioning some of these things. Like
there's so many things bad with that. Yes, I mean, Ready Player One exists. I guess that's like Sword Art Online, right?
Kind of like it, right?
Right. So, but like, God, I mean, I don't know if they need to make something that's also hated by both sides of the community, though. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be great as a live action, and most people already hate the anime. So, like, it's like,
but wouldn't that be like a unique opportunity for people who like want to take a big IP? Because like Sword Art is a popular franchise. Like, there's a reason why there's a Sword Art Online movie that's coming out like this next month in the States.
Live action or animated?
No, not live action, just anime. Yeah, I'm just saying like the franchise is just big, right? And so yeah, like
aren't there just better franchises? Why not, right? Like
if we're just talking like big names, like that seems like a big name that like seems like a no-brainer to me.
I think that's a big name in 2012. I think a big name now would be like a live action Demon Slayer movie, right? Like they would do that, and that would sell tickets, and it'd probably be terrible. but like I would watch it. I would 100% watch that. But like, yeah, like there's, I don't know, man. Like that's just one of those things where I don't think they should make that one, because you walk this weird line where you have to make a movie where the title is relevant and carries weight. So Death Note was big enough, right? I think Death Note is one of the biggest ones to especially for what, like early 2000s. I don't remember when that came out. So I think that checks. I think, like, you know, Rurouni Kenshin, that checks. Sure, even Bleach to an extent, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Sword Art could be made. I just don't understand why, because like it's not like a beloved anime, and it's only going to get worse when it becomes a live action, right?
Okay, so if we were to like conclude, because we talked about a lot of different angles on this topic, and I think in the end, a lot of it is, I think a lot of what we said is based in reason. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of it also has to do with like the feeling of like things that don't get translated properly across mediums. And yeah, I guess like what if we're to sum up some of our thoughts here, it's like one, besides just don't. I think when the original has such detail to why it's so good, they're just certain IPs that I think are just difficult to translate no matter what. Like if someone was to remake Pulp Fiction into another live action version, like God forbid anyone ever does this, but like if they were to just try to remake the movie with different actors and try to recreate Pulp Fiction, I still don't think it would be the same, you know? Like I think you would lose a lot of
John Travolta voice acting.
Dude, like honestly though, like how would you recreate John Travolta or even what's his name, Samuel L. Jackson? Like how would you recreate their level of like character acting that they brought to the Pulp Fiction? Like you just
I just don't think you could. I just don't think you could. Simple as that.
And I think that's not specific to anime from live action. That is just like because the original is so detailed, it is impossible to port that over. I think that's sort of my point there.
I do, however, think most animes, if you wanted it to, could somehow find its way into live action. But a live action movie to anime, I feel like that's a lot harder to sell. That cuts off a significant amount of things. But
okay. Oh, that's actually an interesting argument. Like if you had to choose, like you had to Thanos the world, right? And you had to get rid of one half. And it's either all anime that came from live action or vice versa, live action from anime.
Wait. So live action from anime, right? Or all animes that came from a live action.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
There's not that many anime that came from live action. So
yeah, exactly. And also on top of that,
really
every anime that's come or every live action that's come from an anime has been bad. So I also don't mind getting rid of all of that. But if the argument,
but like if we're just talking about like potential, I guess, right?
I think the argument that you or the debate here that you want to ask or start is which one, right? Like which one would you rather have happen more, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I would rather there be more live anime to live action.
Wait, so
I would
more live action that is based off of anime.
Yes, from anime to a live action. I would rather that because I think you could do it. Yes, a lot of them will be bad. Like they will be, real bad. But eventually somebody's got to have the budget, right? Someone's going to actually have the love for the show and somebody will eventually have the writing team. We didn't have superhero movies that were good right off the bat. We had lots of bad ones for a very long time. We're still waiting for that good video game movie, right? So eventually though, I do think as long as a creative team, like this is why I'm so hyped on this Cowboy Bebop show, is because it feels like it's come from a place of, love, where they pay attention to the details and stuff like that can capture the spirit of the anime. I think you can do that. But I don't know if you could capture that, like the chemistry that is John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson into an anime, right? Like, I don't know if that ports.
I think that's fair, yeah.
I don't think that ports. That's way too difficult. So I would gladly have more anime, like live action adaptations of anime than the other way around, because I feel that is a guaranteed failure, whereas the live action adaptation of an anime has like a 0.0001% chance of being like not the worst.
So I guess to answer the question of what could anime ruin, basically everything.
Pretty much, right? Like, because we don't need a beach episode of Lord of the Rings, right? Like we don't.
No, you speak for yourself, sir.
Maybe we do, and I just haven't experienced it yet. Okay,
I'm just imagining Gandalf with his beard.
Well, did you bring the sunscreen? Whoa!
You don't call me Gandalf the white skin for no reason.
Oh my god,
this fair skin never sees the sun.
Oh my god, like that's exactly it though. I just think writing for Western movies just does not. I don't know if you could just get it. I think there's multiple things. It's because the spirit of the writing, and then on top of that, the acting. Acting is probably the biggest part for me. I could not imagine a world where I don't see John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, right? Like as as the characters from Pulp Fiction. So I just don't see that world happening. But I could see, someday, maybe not, we're not there yet, but someday we'll get that Dragon Ball movie we've wanted. Or someday we'll get that good Yu Yu Hakusho, whatever, right? Kenshin actually was a good live action adaptation, but that's because I think that was the one that could work. But I think there will be other anime based live actions that will eventually be good, just not right now. They're god awful right now, like piss poor. So
yeah, I think in the end, I think this was like a really fun topic to kind of just like think about and to try to get our brains around. And I kind of agree. I think like animation, while it has these great strengths, right? Like in that it can do over the top things, it can, convey some things that are larger than life, literally. But I think when it comes to the detail of acting, it does have its limits. And, also maybe sometime in the future, animation gets so crazy that like, they're able to convey that kind of thing, but
soon,
as of right now,
there won't even be voice actors. Voice actors will use a mocap suit.
Yeah, and it just like beautifully renders all of their things, and then we could see anime Pulp Fiction.
I mean, look, I when that day comes, I hope it's in my lifetime, or maybe I hope it isn't, because maybe it's so bad that I won't be able to comprehend what I watched. But I do think that like anime, it just doesn't translate when the raw emotion, right? Like there are just things that are like raw emotion between two actors that you just cannot get anywhere else. Like no one will be able to recreate that scene. So I think that's why. I think it's a cool thing to think about, like this question. It's just because it stems a lot of like, there's so many things that could apply to why a live action to an anime wouldn't work. So this was a fun thought process, kind of like, think tank kind of thing. So for people who are, listening to this at home, like I'm very curious again, like this is like such a nebulous topic and one that kind of is about a lot of feelings and stuff like I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on like what you heard from us, and if there's anything that we missed. Like I'd be really, really interested. So please, if you're on our YouTube, please leave a comment below and let us know what you guys think. And but that's probably gonna do it for this episode. This was a fun topic, and we will see you guys next week. And like, comment, and subscribe. Please continue to support our channel. We really appreciate it. We're growing. We missed the 420 mark, unfortunately. I didn't get the screenshot of that, but I appreciate all the people who have subscribed to our channel, and there's going to be more to come. Crim is actually moving down pretty soon, so soon. I mean, as in by the time this episode goes up, I'll be there. So maybe we'll actually be in the same screen now. Oh,
yeah. The podcast could look pretty different from next week on. So I hope you guys are excited about that. But anyways, thank you all for listening in, and we will catch you guys next week.
Peace.
Have a good night, y'all. Peace.